one thing that mostly anyone who's relatively close to me knows is that I really love kids. I really love kids and babies. I don't know what it is about them, but I just love to hold them, I love to play with them, I love to hang out with them. Yeah, they can be like annoying and cry sometimes, but like, I don't know, that's just a part of it. Like babies are something babies are what I really enjoy like working with. And so whenever I was in my sophomore year, I was going to New Spring and I worked in the walker and crawler room. And so these were kids who were a little ahead of the development stage rather than just kind of like on their belly, but they were just walking around, sometimes falling a lot, as kids do. But I really loved it. I enjoyed it. Every time I'd go in and watch the kids during the first service, and it was like heaven to me. Like I just got to hold babies and hang out and play with them, and it was amazing. And so I met a lot of different kids with unique personalities. They were all nuts. Some of them were super shy at times. Some of them were not shy at all, just squealing and screeching and screaming all the time. And it could get overwhelming, but I really enjoyed it. But there was one thing I didn't enjoy, and that one thing was drop-off time. So when parents would come, take their kids, they'd drop them off. The kid had there are a few different reactions. Some kids would like be fine. Some kids have done it multiple times, and so they would just kind of walk around and play, and like the lady would take the kid from the parent, put him down, the kid would be off running around. And then some kids would just bawl. And even some of the kids that last Sunday they were okay, this Sunday they just were really attached to their parents. And so when their parents dropped them off, they were holding on as their parent was like ripping them off their body like leeches, and was just like, you take them, and then I'm gonna go to service. And so we had all these different kids, and there were some kids who would cry a lot, and then they'd chill out once you like start holding them and playing with them, and then they would just kind of sit or stand near the area where their parents dropped them off. They would stand there looking up, and a few of them would be like, Mama, Dada, like just, and then so we would say, they're coming soon, they're coming soon. We would try to reassure them that their parents didn't leave them, that their parents were coming back for them. And so we look into the Gospel of John, where one of Jesus' last speeches, one of Jesus' last times talking with his disciples before his betrayal and arrest, he gives them a really good word about the fact that he's leaving, the fact that he's going, the fact that he's going to endure what he's going to endure. And the disciples were a lot like those little kids, scared, worried, nervous when Jesus left. They were okay with Jesus there, but then Jesus went away, and they scattered, and they were lost. And so if you'll read with me in John chapter 16, verses 16 to 22, we can look in and see what Jesus says to his disciples to encourage them and to welcome them into a space of grieving and lament and weeping and sorrow. So verse 16 says, a little while and you will see me no longer. And again, a little while and you will see me. So some of his disciples said to one another, what is this that he says to us? A little while and you will not see me. And a little while you will see me. And because I am going to the Father. So they were saying, what does he mean by a little while? We do not know what he is talking about. Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he said to them, is this what you were asking yourselves? What I meant by a little while and you will not see me? And again, a little while and you will see me? Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned into joy. When a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come. But when she has delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish for joy that a human being has been born into the world. So also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. So we see that Jesus is about to go and be taken away, whisked away into suffering, pain, and anguish. And he's telling his disciples, hey, for a little while you will not see me, but for a little while, and then a little while longer, and you will see me again. Now this pertains very closely to the resurrection and the reappearance of Jesus Christ. But it also pertains to the second coming of Christ. And Jesus gives us the space to grieve, to lament, to weep, to be full of sorrow in the time that he's not here. Jesus has gone. He is in heaven watching over us, waiting for that time to come back. And while we are in that little time, which definitely doesn't seem like a little time, because Jesus said he's coming back soon, and it's been 2,000 years. And so it's an extremely difficult thing to wait in patience for Jesus Christ. And then we see that Jesus compares this in a sense to childbirth. And that's one of my favorite uses of imagery in the Bible is when it talks about that. Because as far as I know, there is no pain greater than when women give birth. Thankfully, I will never have to deal with that. Sorry, ladies, it's gonna hurt, and that's just life. And it's crazy because I watched many YouTube videos where the husbands come in and they put on the little shock things and they go through a simulation of what the pain would be like, and you can see like these guys just freaking out and screaming. But like women do this all the time, and that's really awesome. Like women are strong because they go out there and they give birth and then they have more kids. So they feel this pain and they're like, hey, this pain is worth it because I have a child now. I have a human being in my arms. And so we see this. The disciples are being compared to this woman giving birth, and that they are in anguish right now. But their anguish turns into joy, and it says they no longer remember. She no longer remembers the anguish. And that doesn't mean that we won't look back and say, yeah, that really hurt in that time. But that means that the joy surpasses the anguish. I love seeing newborn babies and like just little babies that you can just basically like envelop in your arms, and they're just so cute. I have a little cousin who I've got to hang out with a good amount, and when babies fall asleep in your arms, it is precious. And those babies bring about joy. And so that is why mothers continue to have children. That is why, despite the pain, they keep going back, because there is a joy that is greater. We look in Romans 8:18 through 25, and Paul says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption, and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been groaning together in the pains of childbirth until now. And not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we were saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience." This eager longing is very similar to those kids who sit at the front area and are like just waiting for their parents to come. And if you've ever worked with kids and seen when their parents come back, their eyes open really wide and they're so happy and they go, "Daddy, Mommy," and they run. They run up and they try to get up over the top, even though they're so small, and so they're reaching up, trying to climb up to their parents, and then someone lifts them up and gives it to them, and that kid doesn't let go for a while. That kid holds on tightly. And we see that although these little kids have great sorrow when their parents leave, these kids have an even greater joy when their parents come back. And the kids know the parent is coming back. They know their parent didn't just leave them there. Like, they're coming back. And so, in the same way, we know that Jesus Christ is coming back. And in the same way, he reassures his disciples that he is coming back. And I really appreciate the way Jesus opens for grieving and weeping and lamenting, because that is, in a sense, what we're supposed to do. I was talking through this passage with Jack Boyd, my good friend, my roommate, and I was reading through the Romans 8 passage, and he noted to me that the word for futility, when it says that creation was subjected to futility, is the same word in the Septuagint as the word vanity in Ecclesiastes. They're very similar. And so we see this thing where the creation and we ourselves are subjected to this vanity, where there are many days that we sit here and say, what's the point of all this? This world's really going downhill. I'm working my butt off. But when I die, none of that comes with me. I work in the fields and I toil, and sometimes you don't even get the fruit of it, and the person who comes after you gets the fruit of it. And so this type of Ecclesiastes language and imagery shows us that in this life, like, it will really seem like it's all in vain. It will really seem terrible, and that is what leads us to weeping and lamenting and being full of sorrow. Jesus says, a little while he's coming. In Revelation 21, he says, I'm coming very soon. And we look at that and say, what does that mean? Because it's 2,000 years and you're still not here, and we really need you right now, Jesus. We have so much going on in this world, so much chaos, and we're sitting like those kids, eagerly waiting and saying, Jesus, come back, Jesus, come back. And we're crying, and we're weeping, and we're sorrowful in that time. But Jesus gives us the hope and the anticipation of something greater, that he is coming. And he says, so also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. We see that the disciples had a really hard life. Many of them were killed. Many of them were martyrs. And they suffered greatly. And when Jesus died, we see the imagery of the crucifixion, where the women are weeping, the women are mourning, the women are crying over Jesus' death. The men are confused. We see men walking when Jesus first comes back and appears to these two men as they're walking through, and he stays with them, eats with them. But he asks them, like, what's wrong? And they're saddened, and they're just they feel lost. And Jesus says this will happen. He says in 16 verse 32, behold, the hour is coming, indeed it is come, when you will be scattered, each to his own home, and will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so we live in futility on this earth. We live in sadness. We live in sorrow. We live in lament. That doesn't mean that some days are really good, that some days can't be good. It doesn't mean that we can't be happy sometimes. It doesn't mean that every single day of our life should be sorrowful. But sorrow is inevitable. Lament and grief and weeping is inevitable. In the same way, when parents drop off their kids, you know there's going to be a few kids who are going to cry. It's inevitable. There are going to be kids who really, really, really miss their mom and their dad. And in the same way, we as Christians miss Jesus Christ. Thankfully, he gave us his Spirit to be with us, but his Spirit doesn't take away our sorrow. It gives us this hope that we wait for in patience. But it does not take away our sorrows. Brothers and sisters, I encourage you in this, that Jesus will see us again, and our hearts will rejoice, and no one can take your joy away from you. So as everything seems futile, come to Christ.